I have been there. I have gone through sobriety of 43, almost 44 years from alcohol. And almost 9 years from prescription pain meds. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way. And yet the Lord has taken our sin and laid it on himself. Isaiah 53:6. I am a believer who is in recovery and struggles from alcohol and prescription pain meds and compulsive eating. My name is Rich. Born into what is now a large family, I am the third born into a family of 4 brothers and 1 sister during the late 50s and throughout the 60s. We lived in a small, modest, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home with both parents. Did we get along? Not at all. Even my parents had disagreements. But who can say that any family gets along with everyone in the family every day when you're packed into a small home? Growing up, my parents made sure we had the basics: a roof over our head, 3 meals a day, even though we ate a lot of soup, macaroni and cheese, fried hamburger, and even Spam. Ooh. And that was usually during the really hard times when my dad was on strike or laid off and only bringing in $25 a week. Through all of this, my parents made sure that we attended church, Sunday school, and even catechism when we got to our teen years. At this point in my life, I felt very close to God. And yet, as a teenager, I fell through the cracks of rebellion and disobedience. This is where I even started slipping out of the house at like 1 or 2 a.m. When I returned home, I found the door locked with the hidden key removed from that special place. Not that I was doing anything wrong while I was gone in the middle of the night. It was just my dad saying, "You're dead meat in the morning." After spending a few nights locked outside, I soon learned to carry a spare key. Sundays were a special day. We would go to church, sit through the service, which seemed to last for hours. We would see our dad going through and acting like he was an usher, singing in the choir, and being friendly with everyone around him. Then I would do the smallest thing. I would do the smallest thing wrong, as kids do. I knew I was in trouble when I caught that glimpse of that evil look out of the corner of my dad's eye, knowing I was really in trouble when all I got was the silent treatment on the way home. This was where I saw the biggest difference between my parents. We would get home and the belt would come off. And my mother would tell my dad that if he laid a hand on us or the belt, she would leave him and he would live the rest of his life a lonely soul. At age 10, I started working on what is called a muck farm. picking radishes and onions. I literally made pennies for each bunch I picked. I brought home maybe $5 to $8 a week. After working in the hot sun and black dirt for hours a day, this was my job until I was 17, and then ended up getting a job as a custodian, working at both the junior and senior high schools. During my time in junior and senior high, I made many friends on both the football and basketball teams. I wasn't great at either one. It was my height and my size that was used for intimidating others that I played against. While in high school, while maintaining my custodian job, I had access to keys and a lot of places in the school where I eventually started hiding alcohol on the school property. I even drank right in class, disguising the smell by injecting vodka into an orange and then eating the orange in class. My girlfriend and I had a lot of free time on our hands. Her parents would leave town and head to their cabin in the woods even before we were out of school on Friday, never returning until Sunday afternoon. This meant we had the house to ourselves for the whole weekend, as well as other times throughout the week while her parents worked. By the time my senior year was well into the halfway mark, it was the middle of February and my 18th birthday. I felt that it was my right to celebrate my 18th birthday. I made sure I had stocked up from my stash from school and started drinking early. By the time school was out that Friday, I had already gone through a bottle of vodka and was starting to go for the bottle that I had buried on the cross-country course. Amazingly, I was still walking, talking without slurring my speech, and you guessed it, I even drove my car. I left school and drove over to my girlfriend's house, and where we made plans to spend the weekend together. I went to the store to pick up my birthday dinner and my bottle of choice from the store where I had purchased alcohol many times. I cooked my birthday dinner of steak and baked potato, and yes, even many drinks. By early afternoon, I had consumed nearly a full fifth of liquor, many glasses of wine, and I was feeling pretty darn good. I was able to be gone for the whole weekend by lying to my parents, saying we were heading up north with my girlfriend's parents and would not be back until Sunday night. My parents were clueless, so I thought. Everything for the weekend went by as planned until many weeks later when my girlfriend came to me and announced that she thinks she's pregnant. We were still 2.5 months away from graduation. I had no insurance, only my part-time job at the school, bringing in maybe $50 to $60 a week. At this point, abortion was brought up by my girlfriend's brother. He had even offered to pay for it because he knew what would happen when his dad would find out. We talked long and hard and decided that abortion was not going to be an option. For the next few months, my drinking increased to almost a full bottle and a full bag of oranges every day. We continued to hide the fact that my girlfriend was pregnant, and even started looking through magazines which had things like baby blankets, clothes, baby supplies, baby names, and all that good stuff that comes with babies. By now, it was the first week in June, and graduation was a day away. And bang! I'm picking my girlfriend up to go to graduation practice. And you guessed it, one of those looks from her mother that I had grown up with from my dad, and I knew I was in trouble. Here was that same look on someone who was not even one of my parents. The look of disappointment and even rejection came through. Remember when I told you my parents were clueless? Well, we had gone over to practice for graduation and then decided to go to my parents' house to talk to my mother. It again seemed to be an hour or three when all of a sudden my mother looked at us and said, "What is all this about?" Well, we looked at each other and looked back at my mother, and she said, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" She knew. She had known from the time she saw us looking at the baby magazine from months before. She even started to make the baby blanket we had looked at. She went out, purchased the magazine and the material, and made the very blanket we were looking at and hid it away. It was the grace of God that day that was in her heart and eyes, and said to me, she had some disappointment, but never rejection. Graduation happened, and wedding plans started. Bills from doctor appointments started rolling in, as I had to pay because of no insurance. So everything was being paid for out of pocket. We started looking for a place to live so that when my wife returned home from her summer job up north, we would have a home. My son was born in November that fall, 7 pounds, 15 ounces, 21 inches long, born healthy with a strong set of lungs. It was now 3 weeks later, and Thanksgiving weekend. We were invited up for the holiday with my in-laws. By this time, my father-in-law had never held my son, and really had no plans of doing so. I spent the weekend observing my father-in-law consume drink after drink after drink. Finally, after the Thanksgiving meal was done, and sure that most of his alcohol had been absorbed into the food, I picked up my son and said, "Here is your grandson. Hold him." Well, it was just like picking up your most precious thing in life and handing it over to a gorilla. But we had to start somewhere. This was one of the lowest points in life, not only for me, but also for my son, who at the age of 3 weeks was experiencing rejection. And I was seeing the same looks all over again. It was now almost 6 months after graduation, and not even one drink. After all, I couldn't afford it. After seeing those looks of rejection from my father-in-law towards me and my son, I realized he had his double standards. His world, or he would sit there and drink all weekend long, and yet he would hand me a Coke or a root beer and say to me, "You have responsibilities. You can't drink." It was after this weekend I started looking for some kind of help. I attended an AA group at a local Alano club close to home. The groups would allow smoking, and I didn't smoke, let alone enjoy smelling the smoke on my clothes and bringing it home. My wife was allergic to cigarette smoke, and my son seemed to fuss even more and cry when I would hold him after returning from the meetings. I soon found a group with a Christian aspect led by a guy named Woody. There was no smoking, and I didn't have to worry about bringing it home where I was feeling rejected by my own son. Even at the age of less than 1 year, because of the smell of smoke, it wasn't long after this group started that Woody announced he didn't know how long he would be able to continue the group because his doctor was telling him that he should no longer drive and his license was being taken away. Woody had been my sponsor and held me accountable for such a short time, and yet he was what I was looking for from my own father. There was encouragement and love from someone who hardly knew me. Woody soon passed away, and yet I think of him yet today. His passion for teaching about the love of Christ really started me thinking about how I was treating others and how I brought into my own life the negative aspects of disappointment and rejection. I thought that it was others doing it to me, but I was doing it to myself. I attended Woody's funeral, and even there, he was an encouragement to me. He wrote a letter to each of us who were in his group. He wanted each of us to know that he was proud of each one of us for making the decision to start the process and changes in each of our lives. Step 1 says, we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable. I know that nothing good lives in me, that is my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. Romans 7:18. It was Woody who, even from his casket, gave me the words that I had never heard from my own dad. He loved me and was proud of me. It was years later when my own dad passed away, and he took those words to the grave. Through my healing work, I realized that I didn't need to hear those words from my own dad. It was my desire, but my dad did not have what they call a love tank, a well to draw from. He had never heard those words from his own dad, because of alcohol. My grandfather, who I never met, died in prison one night because he had a night of drinking after he had violated his own daughter. Step 2 says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. For it is God who works in you and will, and to the act according to his good purpose. Philippians 2:13. It was those words that I needed to hear from God which replaced what I thought I needed to hear from my dad. After 17 years of marriage, my first wife, she decided to file for divorce. Yet again, I was feeling the rejection. I spent almost 2 years going to counseling. It was there I realized how I was rejecting others. When my first wife would ask me if I wanted to go or do something, I would respond with, "Oh, I don't care," giving her the wrong message. Instead of saying something like, "No, I don't want to do that," or even, "Sure, let's go ahead and do that," I had learned the nasty of rejecting others and realized I was becoming my dad. My love tank was not being filled, and I was not filling my children's tank either. CR has changed many things in my life. I enjoy being here on Wednesday night, and I had to change that because in Holland, we do Monday night. I didn't want to say Monday night. Let's see. We are here with our forever family. Going through a step study has given me some looks and tools on how to continue to grow and change my faith to become stronger and to know that I will never walk this journey alone. It has given me some new brothers who I know have experienced and similar things in life. We can hold each other together, we can hold each other up and encourage each other where we start to feel alone and down. Coming on Wednesday nights, I can fill that love tank with truth and joy, which allows me to then spread that around because I have something to give. I have been where many of you are today. It is not an easy path to start out on. Giving up on alcohol, drugs, even prescription pain meds, food addictions, sexual addictions, feeling down about yourself, thinking that we are not as good as those around us. In God's eyes, these are things that he had laid on his son's shoulders and took to the cross. We as a family here on Wednesday nights have something that others don't. We have each other without condemnation, without rejection, and without fear that others think they are better than us. I want to thank you, Forever Family, for lifting me up and being my friend. I love all of you and am proud of each one of you. This path is not easy. Back in November, I lost a brother to what's called Korsakoff syndrome. He drank himself to death and fried his brain. He is now forever gone. I understand where some of you are or have been. And I'm proud of each one of you for being here, living out the purpose that God has planned for us.